Welcome back to the Great American Debate. The resolution on the table: there is too much government in my life. And right now we're going to talk about where government should be in terms of individual liberties and privacy. We have a question to my right.
I'm a preschool teacher in a university town where dangerous driving is an issue. I read the headlines while I was leaving town that the red light camera surveillance issue was not approved. And my question is, when does safety trump people feel that's an invasion of privacy to be videotaped? We use it in convenience stores, many places. We use it to catch criminals. Thank you.
Eminently sensible. George.
Well, I'm worried, actually, by the mad proliferation of cameras following us through our lives. It does seem to me that when you say, when does X trump personal liberty? Almost never.
When it's a matter of saving lives?
I don't want to make safety parallel with, equal to, let alone trump personal liberty.
Well, I would welcome, George, and I do think there is a complication when you're driving a car, because that implicates others. But I would assume, George, you are going to sign on with me and Ron Paul on removing the criminal penalties on the use of marijuana and on stopping this terrible regulation of the internet in which we tell adults that they can't gamble. And frankly, here's where the right wing is very much for big government. They are the ones who want to regulate personal choices, birth control, whether or not you leave aside abortion, which is more controversial. They want to regulate the use of birth control, as I said, gambling, private sexual practices, who can get married. I have never understood why heterosexuals who want to get married believe that if I were to marry a man, they would somehow lose interest in their wives. I am not aware of what my attractive role would be there. So, in fact, it is the case. There is also the case, of course, in the military, and again, I don't get any take-up on that, but a major reason for the expansion in American government, taxation, etc., is an overly expanded American military, which is committed all over the world to accomplish all kinds of social and economic purposes far beyond defense. But let's talk about individual liberty: gambling, marijuana, personal sexual practices, what people can read. Here's the case where, frankly, it is the right wing, particularly the social issues component of the right wing, that has been the ones fostering big government.
But this is another issue, area where so-called liberals and conservatives actually don't feel all that much differently. I mean, for example, when we talk about surveillance, I mean, most people do not want cameras everywhere. Most people want to be able to count on their individual freedom. Most people don't like the idea that is contained in the new Defense Act, the Authorization Act, that any American could be deemed an enemy combatant and lose all of his or her rights with regard to indefinite suspension, habeas corpus. That's not the America we know.
What about what some people see as a paradox, that the right...
Big brotherism.
Big
right?
brotherism, that the right wants to keep the government out of the boardroom, but in the bedroom, so to speak.
So look, big brotherism, I find it interesting that my friends on the left say that they're the ones who are the opponents of big brotherism when they're passing all of these laws to take power from individuals and communities to Washington. When we get into social issues, that's a different debate about what we believe are the origins of life and things like that. I noticed, Barney, you have a big thing with the national defense, with the Defense Department. That's the primary function of the federal government. You may not like what they do.
In Afghanistan, where in the Constitution is
this
that?
Time last week, I was in Helmand Province with our Marines in Afghanistan. They're out there fighting for our liberties and our security, depriving safe havens for terrorists who can come and attack us again. You might not like that. You might have a problem with that.
They go far beyond that.
But it is a primary function of the federal government. They go far beyond that.
You are talking about the construction of societies. I am in favor of the military stopping bad things from happening and shooting bad guys with drones and elsewhere. But they are far beyond that into construction of societies and in trying to build so. Look, we are still in Iraq.
We can debate defense policy. But
yes, let's do that.
Because Iraq and Afghanistan is going to be winding down.
No, we are in Iraq, building Iraq.
The problem is this is something only government can do. National defense is a primary function of the federal government.
Just because only government can do it doesn't mean we should do it if no one should do it.
That's a different question.
Let's go to the audience quickly. Let's go to the audience quickly.
Well, good morning. This is a great debate. I am an evangelical Christian minister from Fredericksburg, Virginia. I'm president of an organization called the New Evangelical Partnership for the Common Good. And so I'm interested in finding common ground, and I'm not finding a whole lot here. But I think it's a great discussion. My question is this. There's a great paradox. I think Congressman Ryan mentioned that paradox. One is this. Two pieces of economic information came out this week. One, that we are a nation of haves and have-nots. 48% are now poverty or working poor. That's the first point. The second point is that we don't believe that as Americans. The percentage, according to Gallup, that actually know that this paradox exists, this great income inequality, has fallen. And so my question is, isn't this a great American delusion and an inconvenient truth that we deny at our peril?
Inequality falls when we have less economic growth. That's the paradox. The point we're trying to say as conservatives is, what do we do to set the conditions for economic growth so we have upward mobility, so that people can rise through society? We have a dynamic society in the American economy where people move all around in income groups. People who are at the top don't always stay there, and people at the bottom don't stay there. The question is, what are we doing to make it as easy as possible for people to rise to the ranks and make the most of their lives and remove those barriers in front of them?
The answer is not nearly enough. I mean, yes, economic growth is a necessary but not a sufficient condition. We now read daycare for working mothers is being cut by this assault on taxation. Community colleges are being cut. Pell Grants are being cut. I am talking about those measures which will allow people who were not in great circumstances to move forward. And only the government will do that. There needs to be sufficient public spending for community colleges, which are generally overwhelmingly public entities, and are being cut back now, on Pell Grants for lower-income people, for working mothers to have daycare. It is precisely those things that enable some people who are not now fully participating in this growth to participate, that are the victims of some of this mindless budget cutting.
Also, beyond this, Christiane, you started to ask about civil liberties and civil rights. One of the great and proudest things this federal government has ever done has to do with the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act. Making sure that there is upward mobility and equal opportunity for people with not only based on race and religion, based upon disabilities, based upon sexual preferences. I mean, if we did not have those laws, this country would not be as strong as it is now, and we wouldn't have the upward mobility we do now have.
Can I get an answer on marijuana, George? Are you with me on marijuana? I mean, in personal liberty, if someone wants to smoke marijuana who's an adult, why do you want to make them go to jail?
Well, as you know, first of all, on the internet gambling, as you know, I'm on a supporter of the Barney Frank bill.
Yes.
With regard to marijuana, I need to know more about whether it's a gateway drug to other drugs. I need to know how you're going to regulate it, whether you're going to advertise it. I am open to the. Well,
it's been around for a long time. You say a gateway. Anything is a gateway to anything. And let's put it this way. That's the slippery slope argument, which is a very anti-libertarian argument. The fact that if somebody is doing something that's not in itself wrong, that it might lead later on to something else, then stop to something else. No, don't lock them up for smoking marijuana.
Well, what you're calling a cop-out is I'm calling a quest for information. Now,
how long is it going to last, George? We've been doing this for decades.
I understand liberalism's aversion to information because it often doesn't go in their direction.
No, I'm not averse to it. I've been studying this for a long time. You're on Medicare. I mean, how much longer are we going to have to wait for you to make up your mind?
No, but
I wanted to get back to the issue of social mobility because I think it is the
Good.
basic
Let's get off marijuana
promise
and onto this.
It's a great embarrassment for the conservatives that they want to tell people
all right,
who
come
they
on,
can have
let's
sex
get on
with.
with it.
Come on, Paul, this is big government. Who can I have sex with? Who can I marry? What can I read? What can I smoke? You guys, on the whole, not all of you, but it's the conservatives are the ones who intrude on personal liberty there.
All right, Christiane.
Taking that into account, the basic function of the government, this government has in the past enabled social and upward mobility. This is something governments know what to do. Education, healthcare, to create a healthy society.
Right.
Yeah. Don't you think that's where it should be involved?
Yeah, there are 3 points I would make here very quickly. Number one, the math just doesn't add up. All these tax increases they're talking about, letting the Bush tax cuts expire on the top, it would pay for 8% of the president's planned deficit spending. So they're raising these taxes to pay for spending that never catches up. We're going to run about a $9.5 trillion of deficits over the next 10 years if the president has his way. The second point is, let's stop subsidizing the wealthy. Stop crony capitalism. Stop corporate welfare. Means test our entitlement programs. And the third point is, let's get out of this class division rhetoric. It's dangerous. We should not be speaking to people as if they're stuck in some class and that the government's here to help them cope with their lives.
It's
We should
dangerous
be
to the people
appealing
on
to
the
people's
top.
sense of upward
I've
mobility and
never heard a
opportunity.
poor person complain that it was dangerous to talk
You
about
will be able
economic
to
and
sum up in your closing arguments.